Today on Mormon Scripture Explorations, we're looking at 1 Nephi chapter 9. Very short chapter. I don't have a lot to say on it, but we'll take a look. It's got some interesting things in it. It's essentially an editorial comment or a digression by Nephi in which he explains what he's doing and why he's doing it. He does this on a couple of different places that I've listed there after verse 1. So it's actually not uncommon for Nephi to do these types of editorial comments. And later on, the same type of thing is done also by Mormon. Anyway, he explains that his father saw and heard the vision and then spoke, that is, he told the story while he dwelt in a tent in the valley of Lemuel. This is harking back to earlier verses that I've indicated there in blue. The arrow to the left means that it's an earlier text. The arrow to the right means it's a later text. And as usual, Nephi says there's many other things that his father said and did, which could not be written on these plates. And this is the lost book of Lehi. And similar statements are listed there at the end of the verse. Now, Nephi now explains what these plates are. These plates are the equivalent in verse 2 of the small plates as they're described elsewhere. Look at Jacob 1:1. But he says he doesn't make the full account of his people on these plates, but instead he makes a fuller account on the plates of Nephi, which are also called the large plates. So basically, it's a convoluted way of saying this, but he's saying there's two sets of plates. There's a short account, which is essentially religious and emphasizes his ministry, and then there's a larger account, longer account, which called the plates of Nephi, and that emphasizes the political, social, other types of things instead of just the religious. Now, what's interesting is that not simply that he kept two different sets of records, but that he had a commandment of the Lord to do this, to make the small plates, and to keep an account of his ministry. And then, of course, he's kind of redundant throughout this passage. And the large plates of Nephi, they're about the kings and the wars and the contentions and so forth, the small plates of the ministry. So he's got a commandment from the Lord to keep these plates. Now, maybe he had a commandment from the Lord to keep the large plates as well. It's not really clear. But the small plates, which contain his discourses, his visions, his apocalypse, his ministry, that's what we've got then in the Book of Mormon. 1st and 2nd Nephi are the small plates. And that's the thing that should be clear. It's an abridgment by Nephi himself. It doesn't contain all sorts of other things that might be of interest. Then in verse 5, he reemphasizes that the Lord commanded him to make these small plates for a wise purpose in him, which purpose Nephi doesn't know. Now, this is discussed more in Doctrine and Covenants 10:38 to 46, in which the Lord explains, in part, what the purpose of the small plates was. The Book of Mormon couldn't include the entire record, so it's got an abridged record of the religious stuff, and it's kind of also a backup copy to the Book of Lehi, which is lost. Now, in verse 6, he kind of gives a little homily that the Lord knows all things from the beginning. He prepares a way to accomplish all his works, and this is, of course, a different way to phrase 1 Nephi 3:7. He's saying exactly the same thing here, only from the Lord's perspective. That is, the Lord will prepare a way, find a mechanism, fulfill his plan, his works. And then he says he has all power under the fulfilling of all his words. Now, interesting here, it doesn't really tell us that he has all power in a completely omnipotent sense, but he has all power to fulfill his words. That is, to do what he plans and intends to do. He has power sufficient to do that. Maybe it implies omnipotence, doesn't say it expressly. So we have this little digression here. It explains a little bit more about the small plates, that they are an abridgment, they don't contain everything, and that the Lord commanded him to make the small plates, for a specific purpose and goal in mind, which seems to have been to supplement the lost book of Lehi. few sources which describe this and give some bibliography. Remember, the abbreviations are found in the Mormon Scripture Explorations blog, and these are essentially reference works that talk about these issues and provide some diagrams and stuff. It's interesting to note in this regard that if we imagine Joseph Smith inventing and writing and making up this story on the fly, it would be very difficult for him to make all these convoluted ideas about all these different plates and records mixed up. Why not just tell a straight narrative? Why all the digressions? Why all the little details about all these different records that they had? And there's really quite a few, a couple dozen mentioned throughout the Book of Mormon. So it's very strange for him to do this if he is a conscious con man making up this story. It makes perfect sense for him to do it, of course, if there really were these records and he was trying to sort it all out and keep all the records clear. Then this is exactly what you'd expect him to do. So it's a complexity of the book is good evidence of the authenticity of the record. So, if you want more information, take a look at my blog on Mormon Scripture Explorations. Thanks for listening.